So this is Anand. Meanwhile, I thought I'll ask you.
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah. So do you also, like, part of your services do this startup valuation and all that stuff in your current consulting?
No, not exactly.
Okay.
Startup consulting I can give, but not in the valuation.
Valuation.
Startup consulting, overall management, and arranging funds and all.
But again, okay. But while arranging funds, you have to present the valuation also.
Yeah, because see, I'm not an investment banker, so we will definitely prefer to somebody from the. I can do valuation. That is again, specially, my preference is always DCF method.
Okay.
Right? But I generally don't do that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you have any specific case, you can discuss with me on a one-to-one basis. Hello. Hello. If you have any specific case, you can discuss with me on a one-to-one basis.
Abhijit?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, am I audible?
Hello?
Yeah, I'm audible.
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah, tell me.
Sure. Hello, Abhijit, am I audible?
Yes, you are very much audible.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Yeah, sorry. Abhijit, if you get time in between, can you help us in understanding about SME IPO underwriting? What are the parameters to be considered? I mean, I know the basic criteria, but how the valuation comes and all.
Okay, might be in the next day.
Yeah.
Not today.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Can we start today? 8 participants. Just 10:35, I'm going to start. Yeah, let's start, guys. Okay, so this session is all about credit risk modeling. We will talk about what is the significance of credit risk modeling, how it works. And then lastly, we are going to discuss a practical case study on a particular model called Oddman Z-score. So credit risk modeling refers to the process of using data models to find out two important things. The first is the probability of the borrower defaulting loan. And second, the financial institutions rely on credit models to. And the second important thing is what is not written here is the data source, that what is my important factors. I'm sorry. The first one is determining the probability of default for the loan. Second is based on the probability of default, you decide what is the percentage of your entire fund to be allocated for one particular portfolio. So these are the two aspects of credit risk modeling. So when we talk about internal rating based approach, there are 4 different credit risk components. One is probability of default. Second one is exposure at default. Third one is loss given default and effective maturity. So we are going to discuss every 4 different categories one by one. Now, what is probability of default? Probability of default is nothing but likelihood that a borrower will default, right? The probability is expressed in the form of percentage, which lies between 0 to 100%, right? Higher the probability, the higher the chances of default. Now, this is a picture which shows that based on the AAA, based on the ratings, what is, yeah, the other one is, that's what I told you, the based on the probability of default, we will assign what portion of our fund will be allocated to that particular product. Right. Now, probability of default, how do we calculate probability of default? That we are going to show you in the Altman Z-score model. Now, Altman Z-score model is typically okay for corporate customers, and especially the companies, private limited companies where there is structured balance sheets or even LLPs. But there is another model which is known as logistic regression or gradient boosting model, which takes care of mainly the retail loans like credit card, personal loan, which is typically the short ticket size loan. So there all the details gets captured. So we will discuss. Next is exposure at default. Now, exposure at default means how much should we expect the amount of outstanding to be in case of default. It is the amount that the borrower has to pay to the bank at the time of default, right? So what is my exposure at default? So there is a particular formula that we fix a drawn portion. Drawn portion means what is the outstanding, what is being availed by the customer. So if my limit is 50 lakhs and if I have availed 30 lakhs, then 30 lakhs is something which I called as drawn portion. And the undrawn portion is how much? If my limit is 50 lakhs and I have drawn 30 lakhs, what is the undrawn portion? 20 lakhs, right? Then this 20 lakhs is multiplied with CCF, that is credit conversion factor. This formula takes into account the fact that stressed and borrower tends to use more of their credit line because lack of availability, right? So now let us have a quick, you can say, brainstorming session where there is a limit of 500 lakhs. Drawn portion $300 lakhs. CCF is, say, 0.5%. What is EAD? Calculate EAD. Calculate EAD. So it is 301.5 CR actually. DD is 301.5 CR. No, 301 CR. I'm sorry, 301 CR. Yeah, because the credit conversion factor has to be multiplied with 200 lakhs. Now, why the undrawn portion is also taken care of? Here's a question to everyone. Why the undrawn portion is also considered, whereas we should ideally consider what amount the customer has taken. That is the drawn portion. Why we are considering the undrawn portion as well? What's the revert? Customer can draw that as correct. So the customer who is showing an intention to default is basically have a tendency to avail more and more of the limit and raise more and more of the debt. This is a trend. So in case he draws that amount, for that we consider that exposure at default, considering both the drawn limit and the undrawn, right? Yeah, Praveen, we are taking some basic calculation only because we cannot get into complex calculation considering a uniformity in the batch, right? We cannot get into the too much of complexities. We have to keep an uniformity because everybody is not having a credit and risk background. We have to keep it in our mind. No, you wanted to clear, that is also understood, but I also wanted to clear my point to you, which you should also understand. Next one is loss given default, means how much of the amount outstanding we want to lose. So what is the loss when there is a default? It is a proportion of the total exposure when borrower defaults. It is calculated by 1 minus recovery rate. So one is my exposure at default and second is 1 minus recovery rate. Right. So this is the formula of LGD. Now the effective maturity estimates the true maturity of bonds that may be called back. It measures the effective maturity by weighting the payments by the proportion of the bond value. So what happens? We find out the present value of the cash flow. And how do we find out the present value of the cash flow? We all know that we discount with a discounting factor and then we divide it by the bond price. So it is basically a summation of time into WT. So for the year one, what would be the WT? That year one into WT, year two into WT2. So if I consider T equals to 1, 2, 3 to the power 2T, or say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, say for an example, let us take an example. So for an example, the cash flow CF1, CF2, CF3, CF4, and CF5. Right? Say for an example, 1 lakh, 1,20,000, 1,30,000, 1,40,000, 1,27,000. Right? We can find out NPV. Right? Return say 7% with value of so I get the current value I think there is some issue. Yeah. So this is the current value. So 7% considering is the discounted rate. I get this as the current value, which is lesser than this. Right. Next one is what I have to do. The present value for every year is different. So rather than directly calculating NPV, what I do is NPV for second year, NPV for, so 1 second. So we find out what is this NPV for 12/2. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we have to find out NPV for each year. And we have to multiply with this time factor. And whatever summation comes, that is basically the effective maturity. So if I do that, so your cash flow for the year 1 equals to this divided by 1 plus to the power 1. Yeah, so this is my cash flow, right? So to the power 1, let us not write 1, let us write this, so that we can simply drag it and get the value, right? Now next step is I have to multiply this with this, and I drag this, right? And this is my effective maturity sum. Okay, this is my effective maturity. Clear, everyone? Clear or any doubt?
Can I ask?
Yeah, Praveen. Who is this, Praveen?
Yashwant here.
Yashwant, yeah.
What is the actual significance of that number, 15 lakhs odd, whatever we have received?
So it is an actually effective measurement, effective maturity weighting the payment by their proportion of the bond value. So significance is that you are discounting that entire factor and they are multiplying it with time. So for the 5 years, so what happens is that, see one thing, what is the current value of your 1,27,000?
That is 90,000?
Right. You are keeping it blocked for how many years?
5 years.
So that's it.
No, 5 years, if we multiply, it will be 5 times of the value. So,
Correct.
which is in actual, that is not the actual returns or the actual value of the bond.
No, that is not the actual returns of the bond. That is true. You are absolutely right. But you can invest the same amount 5 years. Like if you liquidate and if you invest it 5 times, then what?
It will be same only, right? I have withdrawn, I am investing again, the same 90,000.
No, but actually effective maturity in the sense, what they are saying with the discounting, saying it has to be multiplied with the tenor.
Correct. No, I understand the formula and the calculations are correct.
Hmm.
So, like, what is the implication or what we get it from this number? Is it the return or is it just a value used to evaluate something else?
I understand your point, right? So this is definitely just an input to evaluate something else.
Okay, okay.
This definitely it has to be, to evaluate something else. So in that case, we have to get into much more broader aspect of this. So when we talk about effective maturity, then because see, when you are talking about your cash flow or return, then obviously your investment is not this much. It has to be much more than this, right? So this portion again, I will check that what could be the next step of this
Is it,
particular
sir,
activity.
is it because just just a thing? See,
Yeah.
like maybe like because the discounting rate will also be, like as we discussed earlier, will be
Hmm.
inflation, country risk, and several other factors. So
Correct.
if then the actual value is just keep going down, then there can be a treasury loss which they have to show in P&L. Can that be also a scenario? Like I think the same thing which happened in US, one
Okay.
bank collapsed because they put the money in something and then the treasury losses has to be booked. If example, US interest rate jumped from 3 to 6 or 7 because of the inflation, and then your bond yields, this investments became negative. So then you have to book the losses also, right? That has to appear in P&L. So maybe that could be the reason why maybe you are calculating.
Could be. So that's a good point raised. Thanks for this. I'll definitely explore effective maturity in details. That what could be the like where it is acting as an input, right? So definitely it has got certain input to something.
Treasury
That
losses.
is why it has been
Right.
taken out, right?
Treasury gains, treasury losses.
Treasury gain, treasury losses.
Like we
anything.
find always ICICI Bank, actually I know the guy. If you observe, he always makes good treasury gains. Whereas if you look at SBI, they always end up in treasury losses. So
No, but what is your point? If you could elaborate on this, like
me?
yeah, what you say just now is
Yeah, what
treasury.
yeah, see
The
what
question is, the question what he asked is,
okay.
how come 15 lakhs be there? And even if it is a 15 lakhs, then where exactly this 15 lakhs is going to be an input?
Yeah, this could be an input. That's what I'm saying. See, if there can be a treasury loss and treasury gains based on the movement of the interest rates, because your discounting factor will keep changing, right? See, discounting factor is not at all a constant. Discounting factor will be attached to your Fed
Inflation
or
and all. Correct.
inflation. Inflation in turn will get adjusted to the interest rates. So
Hmm.
somebody has say put the money at 3% as a Fed interest. So this is what happened. Somebody mentioned Silicon Valley Bank. Then say interest rates become 6%. Then this one will be negative, like to that extent. Then you have to show that because you're not booked the thing, so then you can you have to show that as loss or something like that in your books if you're booking it or something like that. So you have to state like a mark to market, right? So the mark to market, in my opinion, this is going to have a impact. If you book, it's a loss. If you don't book, you have to show it as a mark to market possible change in the value, like what we do in equity derivative, right? If the market crashes and if you have betted on the long, then your mark to market will be negative. But once you book your loss, it will actually appear in your P&L. Otherwise, on your notes or somewhere, you have to define that, okay, this is my mark to market, M to M. So this, I think, will have a notes mark to market. And when you actually book losses, maybe or profits, it will replicate in your P&L. And then definitely this is for RBI or somebody to see, because if you huge bets and then you are negative on the mark to market, and how much it's going to wipe you out and all that, depending upon the business line or kind of exposure you are into it. So just to add, RBI may, or even RBI made, if I'm right, some mark-to-market losses when US interest rates actually went up.
Praveen, can you throw some light on this?
Yeah, Praveen is the right guy.
Praveen, can you unmute and throw some light on this?
Sorry, I'm not very clear. What are we discussing?
So actually the question is why we are multiplying this as per the formula of effective maturity. See, what we are doing is, this is the cash flow, right? And this is my discounted cash flow, right? Now what we are doing as per the formula of the effective maturity, the time is being multiplied with the discounted cash flow and we are taking a summation of that. So it is simply, the formula is this: summation of T into WT. So this is my effective maturity, measures of effective maturity weighting the payments of the different proportions of the bond value. Now the question is why we are multiplying this and then we are taking a summation. The question seems to be quite valid. And is it used as an input factor for something else?
Okay, so means I can explain, maybe it will take some time, but very simply I can explain. I don't know about this. Means rather going into the formula, right? So the simple why an effective maturity is done, right? So for example, bonds are not that simple instruments as it sounds like, right? Because we take bonds as a very simple instrument, that I have a 10-year bond, I get a interest every year, and then after 10 years I'll get my principal payment back, right? And then your effective maturity is as simple as 10 years, right? Why the effective maturity as a concept has come into picture is because there are a lot of optionality which are added to the bonds, right? Means for the complex bonds, right? You have a call options, you can have some prepayments, which is not very, very standard, right? So why banks do this is very simply is to calculate as to what, for the risk management purpose, as well as to by when they can really get back their principal back. So for example, there is a call option to it, right? Or after 3 years, you have a you have an option to call back your principal, right? But you do not know after 3 years how the market condition will look like, whether you want to wait for 10 years to get your money or you want to call back your money in 3 years. So you assign some probabilities to it, to wait to it. I'm just trying to make it simple. It's and then based on that, you find out what, by when I'm expecting my principal back. And based on that, your effective maturity can be lesser than that 10 years, right? If it comes to be less than 10 years, then somewhere your risk management from perspective, you feel that I'm better capitalized and I can take more maybe bonds, because if my effective maturity is coming to 8 years, right? Or vice versa, if it is coming higher. So this is this is the purpose of effective maturity. So any cash flow, what to calculate from is an input to find out at the end of the day by when I will get my principal back. That is the purpose of effective maturity.
Now, then my second question is, so can this effective maturity be used as an input to something else?
Yes, so it used. So it used main is, means from my from in the division I am, right? It is done for the risk management, right?
Correct.
So the higher is your maturity, obviously, the more and more riskier, simply we put. So if you have some call options, and if you are able, if your market conditions are good and you feel that you are going to call back your money earlier, right? Your risk management is better. So it is done more from the risk management perspective.
Correct.
But it is also done from the cash flow, right? More from the business, right? So if I'm expecting my money to be back in 5 years as against standard 10 years, then I have more liquidity after 5 years. So I can take more leverage bets after 5 years investments. So it is done for various purposes. Means these are the two purposes what we have seen. And the third, very simply, we have seen for valuations, but I'm not a valuation guy. But for risk management and for cash flow, this is majorly done the effective maturity. To the extent we have seen, yes.
So the third one which you are saying is striking my mind would be for valuation.
Yeah, they do. Like what happens is that, so So your PV calculation will also change, right? So right now your PV calculation very standard because we are expecting 7%. It is
Correct,
like every
correct,
year. But if
correct.
suppose you have a callback option that after 3 years you can withdraw 20% of your principal, everything, this complete formula will change, right?
Correct.
And your
Correct.
effective maturity will change and your present cash flow will also change.
And also the present, also the discounting factor keeps on changing based on inflation, because standing on today, I cannot foresee
Exactly.
what would be the inflation 2 years down the line. And
Yes.
based
So
on
for
that
example,
inflation-
so for
yeah.
example, if a bank, so generally what happens is that we are talking about a very small amount, right? It runs into billions for bank. That's why it becomes very important. So if they are expecting Fed to increase the interest rate, right, they might find that these bond becomes unattractive after 2 years, right? Because they can get better bonds at a higher interest rate. So they
Correct.
might go ahead with their calculation of valuation that I must execute it after 2 years rather than earlier I might be planning 5 years. The complete this, your calculation will change. So your existing valuation, pricing, everything is dependent on this effective maturity. That's why it's very important for bank.
Correct. Thank you so much, Praveen.
Because, sorry, just right. Because bank
bolo na.
not necessarily does want to hold until the maturity, because retail investors work differently than banks, right? They also trade. So they do not want to keep a bond for 10 years, right? They might,
Right. 5
depending,
years
they
max.
want to sell, they want to take another position. So these things help them, because if you go by the simple maths, then it is like 10 years by when you can get your principal back. But in reality, the valuation, because of the change in the market dynamics, that number can be different.
Correct. Right. Thank you so much for your input. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. So let's go ahead. So how to find out a loss given default? Simply putting a formula. Someone takes 1 lakh as a home loan from bank for purchase of a flat. At the time of default, the loan has an outstanding of 70,000. The bank has foreclosed and sold the flat at $60,000. Now EAD exposure at default is 70,000. This is again wrong. It is not. No, it is 70,000 because it is home loan. He cannot draw any more money. Had it been a limit, then probably this figure would have been different. So earlier question which we were talking was the drawn limit and undrawn limit. Here already the person has drawn and the outstanding amount stands at 70,000. So the exposure at default is 70,000 and loss given default is calculated by the 70,000 is the exposure at default minus the realization. When the financer reposes the asset, they are able to realize 60,000. So 10,000 divided by 70,000 is 14.3%. That is the loss given default. Yeah, Praveen, actually, see, we want to keep things basic. Actually, that is what I told you, because we need to, just a second, Praveen, just a second, 1 second. Yeah, sorry, guys. But tell me one thing. Yeah, Praveen. So what I was telling is that, so we have kept this thing very basic because we wanted to keep an uniformity. Like, see, what happens in a batch, there are people who are having exposure to credit and risk. Probably there are people who has done FRM, CFA and all these things. So they will definitely have much more age compared to others. But then when we are in a batch, we have to keep a kind of uniformity. So thanks a lot for thanks a lot for giving your input in a very simple way. And
no, I understand. Actually, for EAD, right, the only reason I mentioned that, I don't want to hijack this anymore, but the only reason I mentioned
no,
that,
it's okay. You can
yeah.
see, please don't take me wrong. Please
No,
don't
no,
take
no.
me
Why I'm
wrong.
saying specifically for EAD, because there might be many people here who might be aspiring to work in investment bank or might do for go for FRM, and they should not be in for a surprise that, okay, I was told this as a concept, but this is completely different. So I wanted
Right.
to make clear that whatever we are
Right.
learning in EAD was more from the lending, but there are other products as well, which might have a very different calculation at all. So
Correct. So
they
you
should
are
not get
absolutely
left out.
right. You are absolutely right. There are other products which are much more complex. So when we talk about the fixed instruments, bonds and other things, they are much more complex in terms of understanding and all these things. But if you, I guess Praveen or all every other, have you got the books? Have you got the books of part 1, part 2 books?
Means
from
I have
CCRA?
purchased. Yeah.
Purchased in the sense the books for this one, this AIWM. I'm
Yes, I have these books.
you have got this books.
Yes.
Now, if you go through those books, so what I have seen is things are like, you know, prepared in such a way or written in such a way just to keep an uniformity.
No,
So
it's fair.
definitely we cannot, so that is why the teaching method, I'll not say teaching, but the interaction methodology is kept at basic level. So I can
Yes.
definitely understand there are a lot of calculations. In fact, I have seen in my early previous companies, they had a different department, treasury. They used to do a lot of complex conclusions, and seriously, many of those calculations I would not even understand what these are. Basically, because I'm not from treasury, I'm not from the fixed instruments, but definitely those are quite interesting to learn.
Yep. I agree. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But tell me one thing. Now here we are saying that 60,000 is the realization and 70,000 is the 70,000 was the exposure at default. But is it that only 10% is the loss? Is it that only 10,000 is the loss? Isn't there anything else which is at loss? There could be something else also, right? No, interest is already calculated in exposure at default. When you are calculating exposure at default, you are considering interest. I think what you are not calculating is the time value of money. Number one. Second thing is the legal and collection expenses. If it is not included in this 70,000, then obviously that's a wrong thing. So because legal and collection expenses is huge expenses which you need to pay to your appointed solicitor, and that should also ideally come, and then in that case the figure should be ideally more than 70,000 and the loss will be more than 40.3%. So again, this is from the lending perspective what Praveen has said. Most of that are from lending perspective. This is a typical flow chart of different data which we consider while we create a model either in Python or in data analytics, could be in SAS or R. So anybody from analytics background here? Anybody who has worked with this kind of models or created this kind of model? Okay, so what happens? There are two different kinds of, like yesterday also we discussed, there are two different kinds of data. One is quantitative data or qualitative, and another is qualitative data. So qualitative data means like we talked about how the customer is. Say for an example, I had shown a scorecard, right? Did I show you a scorecard last day? So the scorecard comprises of lot of qualitative as well as quantitative. Like for an example, FI feedback, that is field investigation feedback. It can be good, it can be bad, right? Now, when you make the data set properly, good, bad, bad. Now for a customer A, the FI report is good. So you put 1 here, you put 0 here. For customer B, the FI report is bad, you put 0 here and you put 1 here. So first we get all this data, which has and customer focus and also other data like alternate data, and we cleanse the data. So there can be some portion, there can be some place where there is no data available, whereas data should have been available. There is a blank, right? So we cleanse the data and we complete the data set. Then we split the data into 80-20, that is training and validating the sets and the modeling process. Then we use any kind of probability of default model. It could be a gradient boosting or it could be logistic regression, whatever you use to model it. Then you transform it into a risk rating. You give a risk rating that this is the probability of the 80% of the data I have taken. This is the probability of default. Could be 5%, 6%, or 10%, whatever is the probability of default, based on the factors which we have chosen. Now, the next portion is you have to validate the model, right? Train and test. That balance 20% you have to run, and also you have to give some new inputs with those variables and see whether the probability of default is matching with that trained data or not. If it is matching, if it is at least 98% or 95% matching, then your model is correct. So, but if it is matching to the extent of 60-65%, then obviously your model is not correct. I wish I could have shown you, and probably I would be I wish I could have shown you something in Python. Not possible right now. Okay, then I could have shown you that how does it actually looks like in Python when you do all these things, right? So, however, theoretically, is this clear to everyone? Is this clear theoretically to everyone? This is a quite theoretical concept. Ideally, it should be shown in Python. But for that, I need a data set. So this is a logistic regression scoring model. Again, the blue one is in the blue portion is good and the red portion is the bad. So there are two models which has assessed the loan application. You can see at the initial level, it is more of a red, and at the later level, it is more of a blue. Now, this is how a risk model works. So there are multiple inputs which are factored into giving a risk score. One is duration. So longer the duration, higher the riskiness is. All credit paid or not, whether there is any DPD, write-off or any NPA, loss, doubtful accounts. So all these things needs to be considered. Existing paid back, no credits taken, credit amount, installment rate, age, bias, and there could be multiple factors. There could be 50, 60, 100 odd factors. Could be his salary range, could be his company category where he is working, what is the category. So someone is working for Infosys or ICICI Bank is considered to be a category company. Someone is working for a B category company. But the major important factor, if you can see, this is a zigzag kind of model where one factor is affecting other factor also. So for an example, this is a very important concept to understand. So I say that age affects the CIBIL score. How? So I am considering multiple factors to decide a probability of default when I consider age, CIBIL score, number of running loan, number of write-offs, number of NPA, okay, job stability, resident stability, monthly salary, FOIR, okay. So these are only, 6-7 parameters. There could be 100 odd parameters, right? Just a second. Okay. So now, point is that there are few factors which can internally depend on each other. Like age affects the CIBIL score. Do you believe that? Age and CIBIL score has a correlation. Right? So somebody taking a personal loan at the age of 25 is highly likely to make a default and his CIBIL score will be degraded compared to a person who is at his 35 or his 40 or at the age of 45. So now these variables, correct, there will be correlation between the variables. Now that kind of correlation gives something which is called an error factor. So also the creator of the model has to eliminate all these error factors and then come to a point that yes, this is the more or less error-free credit risk model with this much amount of probability of default, probability of default, right? So understanding this figure is very much important. So credit risk model validation techniques. There are multiple validation techniques for a credit risk model. One is data review. So you review the previous data, whichever is there. Another is performance metrics. Second is obviously backtesting, stress testing, sensitivity analysis. Sensitivity analysis means in a certain situation, how my portfolio is behaving. So everybody could see, like suppose I have given personal loan to the people who are working in BPO sector, right? For an example, out of my entire personal loan portfolio, say I have given around 40% of my personal loan portfolio goes to PL to the employees of BPO sector. PL to BPO employees. Now, currently tell me, say for an example, how is the BPO sector doing currently? There is a boom for the BPO sector in the year 2000, 2001, when people were running to join because after senior secondary, one could join BPO sector and start earning money. How is BPO sector doing now? Is it doing that great? It's not doing that great, right? So job cuts everywhere. Because the major problem is most of the BPOs are getting automated. With the chatbots and everything coming in, you can automate most of the BPO with AI and automation. Right. Now, the moment you get a news of job cuts in several BPOs, you see how your portfolio is behaving for the next 2 to 3 months, whether the employees whom you have given loan are able to pay back money or not. And you do a bit of sensitivity analysis, say what portion of job cuts in that particular sector leads to what percent of delinquency in your portfolio, which pertains to that particular sector. Right. It's a sensitivity analysis which we can do. Next one is benchmarking. So we can create certain benchmark that for this particular ratio, this is the benchmark, this particular ratio, this is the benchmark. This has to be like, you know, when you are doing corporate underwriting, at least 10% increase in growth of turnover has to happen. This is a basic benchmark. So you can create a model like that also. So just I would like to share something with you guys. Just a minute. Share it. 1 second. I'm going to share it, just a moment. Yeah. Now, these are arbitrary number. My screen is visible to you all? My screen is visible? Now, these are arbitrary number where you make a benchmark. For an example, current ratio, you create a benchmark of 2, quick ratio, 1, cash ratio. This is a benchmark. This you can change. And this also will change from industry to industry. Right? So you create a benchmark and you see the actual and you see the deviation. This also you can treat as a kind of credit score model. Right? So like this talks about only, you can say financials, but you can do the same thing for banking, GSTR, principal categorization. A lot of things are there which you can include. Right? Next is model governance. So you test the model and see how much the model is accurate. You do testing of the model and you see how much the model is accurate. Right? The accuracy of the model has to be tested. That is called model governance. Right? Expert judgment, obviously, because there are multiple industry experts who are developed, who are skilled in credit risk modeling, and then definitely their judgment should be taken, and it's an important factor. You know, also regulatory compliance. So whether the regulatory compliance method is not, also you can make a scorecard on regulatory compliance, that these are the regulatory compliance met or not met, and based on which you can give a score. This is the, yeah, you can definitely consider a scorecard based on Basel IFRS also. So you can consider those parameters, multiple parameters, and also currently alternate data source, whatever the data they are taking, based on that you can make certain parameters and see whether the parameters are being met or not met, and based on which you can give a score. So this is a typical Altman Z score, Altman Z score, you can say, where there are certain weights or multiplication factors or the coefficients which are given for each factor. So the factor A is working capital by total assets, which measures liquidity. Factor B is reserve by total asset, which measures accumulated profit compared to assets. Factor C, which is PBDIT by total asset, which measures company's asset contribution to profit. What is the company's assets are contributing? How much company's assets are contributing to the profit? Next, D is the market value of the equity, which measures company's market value versus the liability. So market value of the equity by total liability. It should be always more than one. Sales by total asset measures the company's total asset contribution to sales. Now, the model typically is a summation of all this. How does it looks like? I'll show you the model, which is a comparison with 3 different companies. Okay, good to know this, Amit. Yeah, so the purpose of this model is just to check what is the probability of default. Okay, understood, Amit. Right? Now we have considered financials for 3 different companies. One is company A, profit and loss, company A balance sheet, company B's balance sheet, and company B's profit and loss, company C's balance sheet, and company C's profit and loss. From that, we are deriving these factors. How we are deriving these factors? So this has to be changed to company A, company B, and company C. Okay. So working capital by total assets. So what we have done, working capital is equals to current asset minus current liability. We all know. So how do I get this figure? So we will simply go to the balance sheet of company A, right? Now balance sheet of company A, what is the total asset, total current assets? Let us go to the balance sheet of company A. Total current assets is given as, say in the year March 2023, it is 2124.35, right? Let us simply copy this and bring it here. This is the total current asset, yes or no? Now, what is the current liability? Again, I go to the balance sheet of A and find out what is the total current liability. This is the total current liability. Right? Now, what is the working capital? Current asset minus current liability. $606. And what is my total asset? Let us go to company A's balance sheet and see what is my total assets. My total asset is this one, 5578.78. Now, my working capital to total asset ratios turns to be this divided by this. So 10864.10864. Up to this much is clear? Yes or no?
What do you call this 0.1086? What is it? No, no.
How it is coming, you want to know?
No. What do you name that? Any word?
No, this is the one. Working capital by total assets.
Working capital by total assets is equal to what is the parameter? I mean, name of the parameter.
No, there is no name of the parameter. We name it like this one.
That's all. Working capital by total assets. Okay.
Correct. Okay. Working capital by total assets. Now the next portion is, what is the multiplication factor we have for this? We have a multiplication factor of 1.2. Now what do I do? What do I do? I do multiply this into this. So it gives me 1.3. Here I have not separately shown you. Yeah, I have separately shown you the multiplications here. Right. And how it is coming. So I will show it for company A for all the parameters. You will be able to understand how company B and company C is coming. Now this one is working capital by total assets. Next one is again reserve by total assets, right? Reserve by total asset, right? Anybody who is already working with Altman's model here? Praveen, you are working with our Altman's model, Altman's Z-score. Okay, no. Anybody from who is a fund manager who is working, who has worked with this model? Okay. So again, for reserve, I need to go to which place? Okay, you have seen it in some valuation reports, but never understood. Okay, fair enough. So this is the way Altman Z-score is found out. Next is, again, we will go to what? Balance sheet of A and find out what is the reserve. What is the reserve? This is the reserve, right? This is the reserve. Again, what is the total assets? We know the total asset is this. We don't need to go. And how much we are getting? Reserve by total assets. This divided by this. What is the multiplication factor? Is 1.4. Right? 1.4. So again, I can multiply this. Right? I get 0.93. Similarly, next one is PBDIT by total asset. Now here I have to look at the PL account and the balance sheet both. So I have to check the PL account, I have to check the balance sheet. Let us find out what is the PBDIT. How much is the PBDIT? Let us go to the PL account. Now in PL account, how do I find out PBDIT? So I have to check. This is the profit and loss before tax. So this plus in finance cost plus depreciation and amortization. So this is my PBDIT, right? Z-score in Python is not required because Z-score can be comfortably done in Excel. So the data set which you need in Python has to be very much huge. You can always incorporate this in Python, but it is not needed because it can be comfortably. What happens? What kind of data set you incorporate in Python? Where the data set is too much of big, like say around 10,000, 1 lakh, 10 lakh data is there. If you want to do it in Excel, your Excel will hang. So that kind of data set generally is considered in Python, right? And So this kind of thing can be easily done in Excel. And you do it in Excel and you can, present it to, what do you say? Present it in any data visualization tools like Power BI or Tableau. Right. So this is my PPDIT, right? So this is my PPDIT. Then my PPDIT is this, right? Okay. Let me write it down. This is my 1641.98. 1641.98. 1641. This is my PPDIT, right? Again, total asset is known to me. Then what is my PPDIT by total asset? And what is the multiplication factor? 3.3, which gives me 0.971, right? And this is how I am taking out one by one parameters of my Altman Z-score model, right? Next one is my market value of equity to total liability. It's very important. Market value of equity. How do I find out market value of equity? For a listed company, it is my market capitalization, right?
Okay.
For a listed company, my market value of my equity, that is my market capitalization, it keeps on changing every day based on my equity price. Yes or no? Right. But what about the unlisted company? So what I will do, I will simply check the equity portion of the balance sheet. I'll go here. I will take shareholders, equity and total share capital. And I will put it here. Because this is an unlisted company. I will think this is the market capitalization. So this is exactly what? The number of outstanding share into share value, right? This is my market value of equity. Then again, market value equity by total liability. Now, total liability, you can go back to balance sheet, or total liability is equals to the total assets. So you don't even need to go back to the balance sheet, right? Now, what is the ratio coming? Market value of equity by total liability comes to market value of equity divided by total value of liability. What is this? Now, what is the multiplication factor? It is 0.6. So how much I get? I get 0.6. So I have to just check how much I have taken here. How come it is 80012? So that's a mistake. That's a mistake. No. That's a mistake. 80012 cannot be there. Market value of equity.
So the market value of equity will be based on the last round of funding, because how will you, the initial capital will be different, right? Every round of funding, the market value will keep changing, right?
That
Say-
happens only when the company is listed.
No. Even in unlisted, so
Hmm.
example, in the different stages of funding,
Hmm.
the valuation will keep changing. Like initially, it will be very less.
No,
Like-
we are not thinking that critically. We are not thinking that critically. You need that data for that. I don't have that data. I only have the balance sheet data from where I am picking up.
So you'll see the equity part of whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Equity part is exactly what. So for an example, I have 1,000 or 10,000 outstanding shares.
Okay,
The value is 2 rupees 30 price. Paisa.
that's the initial face value, whatever. Okay.
Initial face value. Because anyhow, for an unlisted company, if I do not have data like valuation, I do not have data like anything, I will go by the initial value. In that case, I need an additional data, right? What do I do? Right?
No, that is true, but what would happen is it will be very skewed because in every round the valuation will be going up, but you will be taking at the first data. After that, the valuation would have changed so many times, 10 times, 20 times, 15 times.
I totally understand, sir. Your point is very much valid. I am
Okay.
agreeing to that.
Okay.
But you need data for that. If that data is not provided, then how do you
Oh,
do
okay,
that?
because it is not published, you cannot do anything about it.
Correct.
But
So
you can always do a peer valuation and you can arrive at a PE, right?
So that
In that
you
case,
can-
people do VCs when they put the money PEs, they
Hmm.
always do a peer valuation, like some X company is there. And if it's an unlisted space, they will see the Y company, which is in listed space, and
Hmm.
assign the same PE. And then they have the EPS and then they can work it out, right?
You can do that. See, you
But
can
if it is critical, you can do, but if this how critical is this parameter, we don't know. If it's critical, then you can always do it.
Yeah, you can always do that if it is critical. And again, for valuation also, you need certain inputs. If you have those inputs, you can go for the valuation. What is the process of valuation you are saying? Like, just kindly elaborate that.
No, nothing. See, what I'm asking is, say, example, they are in a private healthcare segment, right?
Hmm.
And then, so you will know, like, because there are so many companies in the listed space. So
Hmm.
you know that, okay, what are the valuations they quote at and how do you compare based on how many cities they operate, how many beds they operate, how much is the ARPU, on all that. So with this data, you know that
So
peer
where
valuation.
from you get that data?
No, see, you compare them with somebody who is already in listed space. As I told you, say, example, you want to do some healthcare. So you
Achha.
have companies like Kim's or Apollo, Fortis, which is already Narayana, they are in listed space.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you will know what is the PE they are at, and you can compare. And then you can take the similar PE and then you can arrive at a valuation.
But before
Now-
comparing the PE, I think we need to understand the management capability also,
Correct.
history also. I mean, I don't think so. PE will give you the right this thing.
Correct. No, you are right. So that's what you have a band depending upon the premium valuation or low end. But I'm saying that because if you take the entry level equity and those things, because they don't reflect, they are actually the true value. So then it will be a number which will be underrated. That's what I'm saying.
I totally understand, sir. It can be done. Definitely, it can be done, and it's a good idea. Now, suppose for an example, PE ratio is, say, for an example, 2.3 or 3.4. That is for Apple, right? Yes or no? How do you calculate PE ratio in an unlisted company? How do you calculate EPS in an unlisted company?
I think EPS, they definitely work it out for unlisted company.
Earning per share, that is definitely number of outstanding share will be in the denominator. And
Without any market price, how do we get the PE?
correct. Correct. So when you do valuation, you need to have certain basic data in hand. Then only you can go ahead for valuation. Otherwise, you will not be able to do valuation.
Okay.
Right?
Fine.
Again, you can try, definitely if you try next day, you can show me, show all of us rather, we would be interested to see that how exactly you are doing it. Right. Next is sales by total assets. Again, sales, I have to go to PL account, right? Sales. Where do I go? I go to the PL account. Revenue from operations, generally I'll take it as sales. I put it here. Sales by total assets. Again, total assets is known to me. What is total asset? This is the total assets. Right? Now, sales by total assets, I get the ratio. And what is the multiplication factor? It is 1. Into 1. Right? Then I have to take a summation of all this. Right? I get 3.16. Now, when I get 3.16, there is a something called normal distribution of this, which I get. Normal distribution of this. So how do I do this? Equals to norm test minus this gives me a value and I convert it to percentage, which is 0% probability of default. This is the total and I find out the normal distribution of this simply by adding a formula norms dist and then I convert it into percentage. It gives me the probability of default for this company. So similarly, we find out for company B and C. And at that point of time, when I did research, C company was having a probability of default for 31%. Okay. Similarly, you can find out for B and C, company B and company C as well. Clear? Clear, guys? Hello. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah, it's clear.
Yes.
So similarly, what you can do, you guys can pick up the balance sheet and financials like balance sheet PL account for the companies which are already listed or which are available in open source, and you can try out this model with this formula. What I can do is that I can send this over mail to Equalify. They can share it with you. You can start using this model and share this to you through Equalify. You guys can start using this model. And this is simple to use. Why? There is another model called Merton model or Black-Scholes model, which is very complex. Why it is very complex? Because first and foremost thing, that is, okay. Why it is very complex? Because that is applicable mostly to the companies which are listed. Here, for last 12 months, you have to take out the share price and you have to take out standard deviation for last 12 months. And that is needed as an input factor for Black-Scholes model. So it becomes more difficult. And there you need to use, if you are using Excel, there you need to use a tool called Solver, and it becomes quite difficult. It is not very easy to implement Black-Scholes model. But Martin model for any company you want to write, be it a listed or unlisted company, you can use Martin model to find out the probability of default. This is mainly applicable for corporate underwriting. So it is mainly computed for companies. So you have to take figures from their financials. Altman is quite common across globe. Across globe, Altman is very common. See, if your probability of default is more and it goes out in the market, then obviously it affects the share price of the company. That is something called sentiment factor. If tomorrow Gautam Adani, any news comes up about Gautam Adani, which happened, I think, a couple of months back, then obviously Adani share price got affected. Similarly, if the Altman Z-score model, whoever is doing it, shows that if the company has 40 to 50% probability of default, and it comes out in the media, obviously it will have an effect on the share price of that company. Needless to mention. So up to this is clear. This was the last topic for today. Thank you so much. And any query, any question for me? Otherwise, we will wrap up for today. Yeah, Yashwant, tell me.
Yeah, you were mentioning about personal loan, like the age gaps. So a general question to you, like what is your view on the question? See, normally only the employees are given the personal loans. So there are private limited companies, LLPs, proprietorship, partnership. The promoters or the directors are paying the salaries to the employees and employees are getting personal loans. Why the directors or the promoters are not given the personal loan? Any views on?
Who said they are not given personal loan? Directors or the promoters can be given personal loan because directors, they do take salary and they are also treated as salaried employee of the company.
Yeah, and why not the partners or the proprietors if they are drawing?
Yeah, based on the ITR it is given. Based on their ITR.
Since I am into sales of all these products from multiple banks.
You are not getting?
No.
I don't know. Which bank is rejecting this?
All the banks.
Partners.
Even for the director, they are not giving the personal loans.
Then in which line of business they are?
Across the industries, across the nature of businesses, whether it is a manufacturer or a trader or a wholesaler or into services, IT or any other services.
Ideally should not be a case. Could be they are thinking that there will be a fund diversion to the business. That could be an assumption.
This is a practical thing because they are giving the salaries to the employees.
No, they are actually see there are companies. I'll tell you one. I'll tell you, somebody has written in comment also, business loan unsecured. This is given to the businessman. It is given by both banks, even NBFCs like Tata Capital, Siemens. It is given by, you say, Hero FinCorp, Bajaj FinServ. Everybody is giving business loan unsecured, right?
Business loan to the business, not to the individual promoter.
Correct. Not to the individual promoter is something I am hearing first time from you that an individual promoter, even based on his good ITR, is not getting personal loan.
Correct.
Honestly speaking, I have not heard that till now, because I have seen a multiple businessmen who are my friends, For my relatives, they have taken personal loan from banks. I really don't know which location you are based at.
Bangalore. And I was a banker for in the front end, mostly into liabilities and branch banking for 14 plus years. And last 2.5 years, this is my business. Getting personal loan, business loan, home loan, lab, mortgage. So personal loans are not being given by the banks and the financial institution to the promoters.
My God. Don't know, no idea. Actually, I have not seen this, so I really don't have any idea about this.
Sure, it was a general question. Right?
No, that's okay. Fair enough. We are discussing about lending. Then definitely it can many kind of questions, not only restricted to lending, can crop up, right? Any kind of question subject to credit, risk, business.
So maybe there's one theory which came to my mind. I thought I'll share. Maybe.
Yeah.
See, being it's very small, maybe industry. In fact, maybe they will check the size of the business, and then see one reason based on salary they may not giving, because if you really think, who decides the salary of the promoter himself? Okay. Just for, I'm not talking, Yash in particular, Yash is my friend, but generally I'm saying, what if I am a promoter and then I pay myself, say, 7 lakhs a year or 6 lakhs a year, as 6 lakhs a month as a salary, right? Then couple of months I do it, and then I take my salary slip and say, okay, I'm earning 6 lakhs, and then you give me maybe 1 crore or something like that a loan. Because I, being a promoter, I can pay any salary for myself.
Correct.
So maybe banks, I think maybe we have to scrutinize more. Maybe they will look at 2-3 years ITR. If they will find out if Yash or myself who is doing business is regularly paying 6 lakhs every month, and for which I am being deducted at income tax. Maybe then they will, assume that, okay, because maybe I'm getting 1 lakh a year,
could be.
And then I pay myself 6 lakhs for 3 months just to get that, more, lending.
Right.
So maybe this could be, my somewhere.
Definitely, it could be one of the reasons.
Yeah, I know Yash won't do it. He's my friend, but then I'm saying.
Yeah, I understand. But for a personal loan, even for an employee, the minimum eligibility is 2 years of ITR. 2 years of vintage.
Okay.
So even if a promoter is getting 6 lakhs of salary continuously for 2 years, and he is showing it in Form 16 as well, or Form 26 AS as well, even then he will not get a personal loan. He will get all other loans. He will not get a personal loan.
Maybe they think somebody who is earning so much money doesn't deserve a loan. On a lighter note. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Anybody else? Any more question for me? Any more question or any view on the today's session?
Abhijit,
Yeah.
I was asking you if you have time, then throw some light on IPO underwriting.
Oh, that's fantastic.
If you have some time,
Yeah.
throw some light on underwriting IPO, SME IPOs.
SME IPOs, honestly speaking, when we talk about IPOs, that is the first time it is coming on into the market. So actually, I don't know how much light actually I can put into IPO underwriting, but definitely I will rather put much focus on the company's underwriting and the future cash flow availability, right? And also to some extent, how the IPO or the equity share will behave in future depends on how the sentiment or perception of the customer, of the traders are. So if you are asking me, just a second, just let me close this. And if you are asking me, I will take following factors into the consideration. If I do IPO underwriting, first of all is, now again, I'm not into IPO underwriting, so I don't know how much light I can throw. One is underwriting of the company as a whole. as a whole, right? Now, this includes, one is general details, like stability of the business, background of the promoters, all these factors, right? Then it is financial details. And when I'm saying financials, I mean exclusively financials, which includes your profit and loss, balance sheet, cash flow, right? Next is your banking details. Next is your charge created details, bureau, CMA data, an extremely important factor which shows me projected financials for next 5 years, that how the company is going to perform, right? CMA data. Next is obviously the credit rating, compliance in terms of ISO certificate and all these things. Okay, all these factors. Plus, so second thing is underwriting, or rather analysis of the sector as a whole. Now, what the experts are saying about food processing industry, say for an example, if I want to know what is the experts are saying, what is the current CAGR of food processing industry, and what can be the expected growth rate of the food processing industry, Now, next is this portion is very important. Why CMA data doesn't mean that client has given me a CMA data and I will blindly accept or blindly believe the data which is already provided to me. What does it mean? That I would prefer to see the breakup figure for turnover specifically the business figure and the profit and expense figure. So basically you do.
I'm sorry, CMA data means?
CMA data means is a projected data which has say a projected data for next 5 years, going into much more granular level. So it comes with a breakup of all the figures which is given, right? So granular analysis is something which I would like to do on each and every figure that is mentioned in the CMA. So if you have, you can put it like this as a projected financial also.
So is there any particular site, or any particular organization you subscribe to where you will get all these, different industries, as you mentioned, their outlook, food, pharma, chemical?
So CRISIL and other rating agencies like CARE, they keep on floating sector analysis. Just you have to search in the industry. I cannot immediately tell you that I do not subscribe anything, but whatever I do it through the open source only.
You don't subscribe, sir? Okay, but you will not get a quality information, no, sir, if you don't subscribe.
That's true. I don't subscribe.
Sometimes you won't even get information if you don't subscribe.
In WhatsApp groups, we get different sectorial analysis reports from brokers and also multiple agencies like Avendas, this, that, and all.
See, that is what I'm telling you. You don't need to subscribe also. I told you, actually, even if you go to moneycontrol.com, you will get sectoral analysis much better than subscribing any magazine or subscribing any particular portal. Okay. Not required. You go and check in moneycontrol.com, things are much elaborate there. Plus, you obviously have to keep a look on the open source information and the news that is readily available. Plus, there are certain news sources. What they do API integration with the live news that is coming up in the Google. So that is called market sentiment analysis. Subscribe and buy EMIs and Morningstar. Okay, this I will check Morningstar. Okay, so there are market sentiment analysis which you can, find out from them. Yeah, money control is not fully free. Money control also, again, you have to subscribe. It's not fully free. Beyond a level, you have to subscribe money control.
One thing which I wanted to clarify is his original question. Maybe I just read it somewhere. He was talking about, this IPO underwriting. Okay, whatever I read, 1 or 2 lines, I just share. Maybe you can see what happens is these people like the investment bankers. Okay, say example, some X company is coming with an IPO. Say I have a company, I'm coming with IPO. The promoters, and then I'm saying, okay, this is the investment bankers fix the price, say between 75 to 85. Okay, it is the job of the investment banker, which is actually called underwriting, to ensure that on the day of the listing, my price doesn't come below 75 band, and for which they are paid something. So what they actually do is they, whenever the price comes below, they keep buying the stock on the opening day, and they support the price. So if they are successfully ensuring that the price band which they agreed, it will be listed to the promoter, it is done, as Sir said earlier, they get a particular commission. See, that is why if you see like Zomato or Nykaa, you can see in money control, day one, it's all bombastic. So within 1 week, what happens is these guys who had actually supported it will start dumping it in the marketplace after taking the fees. So in my opinion, that is actually what your question was in
So
terms
that
of,
is again manipulating the market. So
no, not like that. No, this is part of their commitment to the market. See, that's why if you see, initially they will say after the 3 months period, the VC will dump it, they will dump. See, most of these, stocks which took a U-turn, the digital stocks, like Nykaa or Zomato or blah, blah. So they basically listed very well, many of them, because on the day of listing, as a part of mandate, this is not manipulation, mandate, these investment bankers buy the supply and then support the market and then ensure that it stabilizes within a band for which they are also given a fee. This is part of the entire exercise of listing.
So I totally understand what you are saying is absolutely correct. So for
Correct.
an example, they gave a commitment that I will invest 1000 CR
Correct.
in purchasing your equity. So what they are doing, the moment they don't purchase equity in one shot, they purchase in parts in a single day. Probably they will invest from like 250, 250, 250, 250.
Correct.
Like that.
Correct.
And slowly and gradually, the moment the demand increases, the price of the share keeps on increasing.
Correct.
Then they bring the price of the share to such a band where they want it to be much more stable.
Yes,
and
exactly.
then there is an U-turn.
Yeah, but they see, it's not their intent to make profit. It is their intent to stabilize within the band. That's what the
But
point is.
then, yeah, I understand that is not their intent to.
Because they have committed that it will be in that band to initially to the promoter. They said the promoter, I will ensure that the listing is in this brand and the valuation and then the marketing, selling of the IPO in the TV channels and all. So
Correct,
that's what my understanding.
Nee, that is true.
Basically, I have a different perception about the underwriting because I did underwriting for a couple of issues. Matlab, through connects investment bankers, underwriting is nothing but giving a commitment to the promoter that on the subscription, while it is open for subscription, suppose for an issue of 10 crores, only 1 crore has come, then balance 9 crores, this guy underwriter will fill the book. Agar if the subscription is only 90%, then remaining 10% that guy will put. That is the meaning of underwriting. And once issue opens, that is left to the market. Same thing happened with Paytm and all. They all corrected badly, so there is no action at all. So, and for this underwriting fee, it is in terms of percentage, 3 to 5 or 6, whatever it might be, depending upon the valuations. Recently, if you see, this is recording, no? I'll keep quiet. Okay, that's it.
No, that is true. What you are saying is correctly true. Probably
and whatever you are talking about is called as green shoe option.
Correct.
That is different. There is a price band. Below that band, the underwriter or investment banker, whoever it is, he has to keep on buying it. But that will be for a limited period of 5 months, 6 months. because in Kalamandir there was a subscription issue. The promoter has said we have a green shoe option at the IPO price. That means within 6 months, agar it get listed at 100 rupees, and if it comes to 50 rupees, then he will be buybacking the quantity from the market. I mean, from the investors in the buyback way. But when SEBI said, if that is the case, then you keep the funds raised in the escrow account for the next 6 months. And once that 6 months is settled, you take the money. And he said, I'm doing all this for money, and why I should wait till 6 months? And he cancelled the IPO.
The reason is very simple. Why they are asking them to wait for 6 months? They want to see that how much manipulation is being done and how the stock is moving. What is the trend of the movement of the stock?
Pump and dump.
They want to see.
Pump and dump.
Thanks so much, for the clarification.
Thanks.
Hi, Abhijit. Amit here. Could you
Hi, Amit.
please share this, Ultimate Z scores, working Excel?
I will share it over email to Equalify, and I'll ask them to share it with you.
Sure.
Guys.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, guys. Bye. Have a nice Sunday.
Bye.
Anything
Have
else
a great
from you?
Sunday. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.